You can be like screaming on the inside and freaking out, but as long as you just keep your cool on the outside, the rest of your crew will also keep their cool, you know? I think there's this weird possessiveness that creators will like have at the beginning of their career for some reason, which it should be the opposite because like you suck at that point. Why are you trying to do it all yourself?
That's actually a piece of advice my mom has always said is if you can walk away from a conversation and the person you're talking to has just talked about themselves, then you know you did a good job.
My parents gave me their like Nikon D5800, I think, and I started playing around with that. For some reason, everyone gravitates toward getting a gimbal right away, and the only shots I got were like the gimbal tracking shots.
I'll literally shoot stuff and then I don't even touch it because I'm like, I don't want to edit it.
There's so much gear. And I ask myself all the time, like, are we really making anything better than like there's an early part of my career where I was trying to do too much with too little hands.
It's always kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit of like, that's our camera guy, that's our photo guy, that's our whatever. There's so much talent that goes on behind the camera that I think oftentimes is underappreciated because it's labeled with, that's the camera guy. It's like that camera guy has a name and he's got a dope portfolio and like a killer body of work.
It's such a hot market right now and we're all getting sucked into this like days of thinking that the next best camera is going to actually help us when in reality it's just a tool. As long as I do the best I can and shoot it as well as I can, like that's all I have control of. In the end, like story is king.
How's it going? Welcome to the Creators Line podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Robbins. Today we're on episode 4. We've got Marcus Catlett on the podcast. Marcus, super rad dude. I feel like I say that about everyone, but he really is, and I feel like all the guests we've had have been super rad dudes. Need to get a few rad gals on, but Marcus, really talented, creative, cinematographer, started as a photographer, but transitioned into more video work, and that's typically kind of his bread and butter right now. But Marcus works a lot in the outdoor industry, has had some really rad projects that have circulated around, you know, everything from like skiing to kayaking. He's a big kite surfer, really talented, athletic individual that is able to kind of take some of those skills, translate them to camera work and specifically being on set, where he's able to leverage some of those skills and create rad work from it. But Marcus has some great experience in working with a variety of equipment, everything from, you know, entry-level stuff like we a lot of times have all dealt with to, you know, some high-end production work with kind of his main go-to cameras, which is the Komodo X and the Ronin 4D. Marcus is a master networker. I feel like that dude is constantly working with some really outstanding creatives and leveraging their skills in a way to contribute to the overall production in a really healthy manner. He also has like just great soft skills, which I feel like feeds into that. I feel like Marcus is one of those guys that whenever I'm on set with him, I'm like, okay, the vibes just went up. Love that I have this guy here where I can just shoot the bull with and be casual and just a good homie, good friend. But yeah, he's got some great advice on getting into the industry, how to kind of leverage opportunities that you might have later down the road as you spend more and more time in the industry. But yeah, good dude. This is a conversation with Marcus and hope you like it. What's up, Marcus? Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm stoked to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm stoked to have you. No, I was thinking, I literally put together a list. I'm like, I need to put together a list of, 50 people that I think would be good. And you were probably top 10. So stoked to have you on.
That's super nice. Thank you.
Not top 5, but top 10.
Yeah, you were in the top 1,000 people I could think of.
And you were number 59 out of the 60. No. I'm stoked to have you, though, because I think, like, we met, let's see, has it been like 3 years? Where are we at?
I think it might have been 4 years now.
4 years. That's crazy. So, yeah, I'll give a little backstory on how we met. But so we met via a project, right? Prism. We might talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
But Marcus got brought on as DP. Correct me if I'm wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I was kind of like an assistant camera, and then also did a little bit of FPV. But it was a mountain bike project that highlighted a series of helmets.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of played in a few different terrains all around Utah. But because of that, and Marcus, I'm sure you can dig into it a little bit more, but we just spent a ton of time in the car together, strangers, and we got to know each other, I'd say, pretty quick with a few. I mean, it wasn't crazy, but a few like 3 to 4 hour car rides. I
Yeah.
mean, it ended up being like probably 15-ish hours in the car by the time we were going there and back and everywhere else, right? But
Well, and I was thinking about the Richfield one the other day, and like we drove 4 hours there or whatever. Then we
yeah,
scouted for like 3 hours, and then the same day we scouted, we shot for another 4 to 5 hours
yeah,
or longer. If I mean, we basically were there all day. It was a crazy
yeah.
day.
Yeah, that
But
was
yeah,
kind of the intro, but no, it was
yeah.
cool. I really enjoyed that trip. I think it's always fun when you can get connected with another creative
Mm-hmm.
and have like deep conversation pretty initially, right? Where it's not like this, I don't know. I feel like we didn't have like a ton of like a warm up stage of getting to know each other. We're just like, tell
Nope,
me your
we're
deepest, darkest secrets.
yeah. We're gonna get straight into it. Like, yeah, what's the hardest thing of being freelance? What's the hardest thing of being creative?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
and I think that's a cool thing with creatives. Like, it's so easy to connect with one another because we've all are in different stages of our career and also have like experienced different things. So we all have like value. We all have valuable information for the other person, whether they know it or not. But
Hmm.
I think there's always a lot to learn, and every shoot is so unique and different. So,
Yeah, I 100% agree. And there's a lot to connect over too, because I think the experiences are super unique to your point, right? Where you can learn a lot from each other. But then
hmm
there's also these similarities that tie a lot of people in together where there's maybe like some empathy or a way to connect with each other on a level that's maybe a little more uncommon or like compared to general, um, I guess like interactions with randoms, like
yeah,
if I met some random dude on the street, there's no way I could spend 5 hours in a car one way with the dude without being like, all right, I'm going to take a nap now for the next hour or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that shoot was cool too because we got to explore so many different like environments in Utah, and that's kind
Yeah.
of that was my goal with that shoot was to just like I was like Utah has so many different environments. This helmet has a bunch of different colors, which at the time was kind of unique. Like let's just combine those things and make something cool out of it.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, let's dig into that a little bit later. But right off the bat, I want to hear about kind of your upbringing. Like, where did you grow up? Was there any type of like interest or involvement with cameras right out of the gates, or like any creative realm? Yeah. What did just kind of like the early years for Marcus look like?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Washington in a small little mountain town. Grew up doing like a bunch of outdoor sports and stuff. And I think when I was in middle school, I got my first GoPro and we were like, my buddies and I were filming each other. And then I kind of learned how to use some editing software I can't even remember. And then, I was like asking teachers in high school if I could turn in my project in like video form.
Hmm.
And I was like doing that for some classes just because that's how I wanted to do it.
What
Uh,
kind of classes?
like
Like instead
random,
of photo
like a
form or?
no, like instead of like essay form,
Oh,
like
okay.
one was like a science project with like a team. And instead of like making an essay on our findings, I was like, can we just make a video? And
Hmm,
we shot
that's
this
cool.
super dumb video. I think we were just testing what was gonna like make things explode or
Hmm.
like, like Mentos in a Coke bottle, like that type of stuff.
Okay. Cool.
And it was pretty much just the Mentos in a Coke bottle. So,
The video we've all seen before, but you guys did it.
yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah, and then let's see. I mean, I think the turning point was probably, so I was like doing little video stuff here and there. Um, but the turning point was probably in college. I broke my tailbone pretty bad in a ski accident,
Hmm.
like all my lower back essentially. Right at the beginning of the season too, like in October when we shouldn't
Oh,
have been
dang.
skiing in the first place. Um, but since I was injured and I like couldn't really walk too well, my parents gave me their like Nikon D5800, I think. And I started playing around with that. And then also at the time, I was taking a photojournalism class. So that was really handy. And I still think about that class all the time because I was like learning all these photo theories. And I also thought they were dumb. I thought all the photo theories were really dumb. And I was like, you just point the camera and shoot. Like, who cares about all these things?
Yeah.
And then during the class, he'd like put our photos up on the projector and then just rip them to shreds and be
Oh
like,
man.
this is what you did wrong. This is what could have been better. And would like open it up to the floor and be like, can anyone else say what Marcus did wrong here? And like, it was kind of a brutal class, but you learned a
Yeah.
lot and you learned a lot from like other people's mistakes, besides your own too, which was cool. So we
Hmm.
were all kind of struggling together.
And that was
Uh,
still in Washington.
this was in Utah State or at
Oh,
Utah
okay.
State in Logan.
Cool.
Yeah.
What brought you to
Um,
Utah State from Washington?
well, for one, my grandpa was living in Bear Lake, and
Okay.
so Beaver Mountain was like one of the resorts I like learned how to ski when I was like super young and
Hmm.
had been there a bunch. And then I had some family in Utah, and it ended up being a decision between Utah and Hawaii. And at the time, I was a pretty big kiteboarder, and I just knew there was no chance of me going to class if I went to
Hmm.
Hawaii. I was just, like, it had the highest dropout rate, and I was like, I'm gonna add to that percentage for sure.
I
Um,
would be that statistic.
yeah, exactly.
That's
So,
funny.
so I ended up going to Utah State so I could go somewhere where I could focus a little more and still ski. Um, but yeah, and then I ended up actually shooting for the marketing team there and kind of learning some stuff on that side of things. And then I graduated with a degree in public relations. So
Oh,
pretty
really?
much nothing to do with that.
Okay.
I,
So you were going to school for that, and then this
mhm,
photo theory class was just kind of like a fun little side thing.
side thing. Yeah,
Few credits.
it was part of the journalism school, journalism and communication. So it was like part of my degree, but yeah, it wasn't the focus. And
Hmm.
I don't think I ever even thought of that necessarily being an option for a career of like creating content. And this was when Instagram is like just starting. So I
Hmm.
remember, learning stuff about social media and like the teachers had no idea what they were talking about. Like it was so
Hmm.
new and um, you know, there wasn't like paid ads or anything on it. Um, but yeah, and then so I graduated with that, and then I actually ended up doing graphic design
Really?
out of college. Yeah, for an aerospace company called Institute, and they're a subsidiary of Boeing, and they make like the drones you see in the military movies and stuff like
Oh,
that.
okay. Cool.
Um,
Like the
and
big drones, not like consumer videography, photography drones.
No, yeah, these are drones that are used to do like crazy surveillance from super high up and stuff. But it was like instructional graphic design, so
Okay.
it was just yeah, it was not fun, it was not creative, and everyone I worked with was 60 years old. They're all super nice, but they were
Yeah.
they were much older than I was. Um, and I was getting burned out just even after like a year. And I was honestly getting burned out because I would work like 2 hours a day and then be kind of messing around and be working online. And then I
Hmm.
would turn in a project and they would be like, you're so fast. Like, you're so good at this. And I'm like, I could not be working slower. Like, I can't tell you how bored I am.
You're like, I'm stretching this for every minute it's worth, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then my team hired another graphic designer, and I was like, what the hell are you guys doing? Like, I don't need help.
That's hilarious, dude.
But yeah, the company went through this big like layoff, and I heard about it, and I heard about the severance package since we're like a government employees kind of, and I was
Hmm.
like, I'm down. So I literally told my manager, I was like, if you gotta put someone on the chopping block, like I'll be down. And so yeah, he laid me off. I,
He
I
took you
was
up on it.
yeah, he took me out. Um, And then I bought like a Sony A6500 and a
Nice.
Sony GM 16 through 35. And I started shooting photos. I was only
Hmm.
doing photo during that time. And I was like shooting photos, like commercial website photos for like $16 each or something like
Oh
that
wow. Like
with
per select, that was how you were
per
pricing it, kind of thing.
yeah, with like edits. Yeah, it was kind of weird. I think it was like how influencers were pricing things. So they
Okay.
wanted it like per photo rather than like, now we would do it per shoot and days and all that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Real, real quick, what made you go from I'm an aerospace graphic designer to let me get back into the photo world? Was there
mm,
anything in between there that you were like, the photo theory class in college was sick, or you saw the Nikon or anything like that?
yeah, that's a good question. I think I was keeping the photo thing and some video too going throughout college, and
Oh,
then
okay.
I was still doing a little bit of photo even when I was doing the graphic design job. And that was like kind of my claim to fame for leaving my legacy there was I introduced instructional videos, which
Hmm.
was like absolutely mind blowing to them.
Okay.
Um,
You were a
uh,
prodigy in this arena, dude.
yeah, it was a totally new thing that I'd never heard of. Um, but then also my buddy was like getting into photography and he was living in the same area too. So I think I was just like really stoked on the photos he was showing on Instagram and stuff. And I was like, oh, that could be cool. And then like, that's kind of when like being an influencer was a new, exciting, potentially lucrative thing. So I think I was just like drawn to the creative aspect of it. And I mean, I think originally, like, I was gonna go to school for marketing because I wanted to do creative stuff.
Hmm.
And then once I learned that that was mostly just statistics and numbers, I was like, I
Hmm.
don't actually want to do this. And that was what made me pivot to public relations. And then it was like, and that was just because public relations is not really a creative career. It was just the most creative, similar thing at the time, you know?
Similar to the marketing direction that you were headed.
hmm But
Okay.
like now, I'm sure there's a school for like social media and content and all that
Yeah.
stuff. It just wasn't. It
Yeah.
was too new at the time. Um,
Gotcha.
but yeah, I saw my buddy taking cool photos, and I was like, that'd be fun. I loved shooting photos and can do it. So, why not? And I kind of reached out to a couple companies. My first client was a beer company, and I got laid off in like June. And I went there to like pick up product, and they just gave me like an entire SUV full of beer. Like so much beer. Like I remember like four guys unloading my car
Oh wow.
into our house. So we just had beer for the entire summer, basically.
Dang. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I'd put like a couple six packs to the side for like shooting and then be like, yeah, go ham.
Yeah. And then had a nice inventory for the rest.
Yeah, yeah,
Dang.
exactly.
Okay. So
Um,
that was kind of the beginning of Marcus the photographer era, huh?
yeah, beginning of freelance for sure.
Sick.
Yeah. Um,
Cool.
and I ended up moving back to Salt Lake or back to Utah to Salt Lake because I had a friend here. And when I came and visited, she was like, yeah, there's tons of work out here. I think you'll do great. And like, there's a lot of outdoor options as far as like scenes go. And she just really sold me on it. And it's funny because I was like thinking like, okay, moving to Salt Lake is going to give me work, but I probably didn't even have a local client until like 2 years later or
Oh,
so.
really?
Yeah.
So this was you got laid off, you were in Logan, and then you moved back to Washington for a time
Yeah. Yep.
and
Sorry.
then
So
headed
yeah,
back
I
to Salt Lake.
moved.
Okay.
Yeah, I moved back home for that graphic design job, and then moved to Salt
Oh,
Lake.
okay. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
Um, yeah. So I kind of started, and my buddy and I moved here because we were like Hood River is really small, like it's not meeting a lot of people, it's super clicky. Um, like, let's move to a city where we can meet more people. And we move here on January like 20th, 2020.
Mm, perfect
And
time
so we
to
moved
meet
here.
people.
Yeah. And then it was like, we just were starting to meet people, and then like COVID happened,
Mm,
and everyone was like, I don't want to touch you or talk to you.
yeah.
I might get
Yeah,
sick.
no kidding.
Um, but it was kind of great because I just took that whole year to explore Utah. And I was getting into rock climbing, so that was bringing us to a lot of like really cool locations.
Mm,
And I was kind of getting to have a full year of just experiencing Utah. But I was like dead broke
mm,
and making no money pretty much for at least
yeah,
like a year and a half or so.
that's
Um,
interesting.
yeah. And then the switch to video was that I just saw someone make a cool video, and I was like, I feel like I could do that or try to do it.
Mm,
And I just did a spec piece, shot it in a couple hours in a kitchen. Um, and it was mostly like what drew me in was like all the really cool, unique shots that this guy did. Like he was using a probe lens
mm.
and using a slider in some really cool ways, and um, he was showing all the behind the scenes. So I was like, okay, I can like literally just copy what he did for this other product.
Oh, cool.
Um, and not exactly, but
Yeah,
similar.
yeah.
Definitely a lot of inspo from it. And it was not good by any means. It was super bad. I just like made it with my girlfriend at the time, and um, yeah, everything was terrible about it. I don't think it even exists anymore.
You've burned the
I
file.
burned it, but I did show it to some of my photo clients, and then they were like, "Hey, like we want to do a video like this." And then I sold two photo clients on like a very, very similar video.
Hmm,
So I got to like right afterward, I got to use all the knowledge I learned on the spec shoot in a real shoot, which was great.
that's cool. That's super
Yeah.
interesting. Dude, I
Yeah.
didn't, maybe we talked about it on some of those long drives, but I didn't realize how similar me getting into, I guess, like the creative space was to you because I worked at, it was an air freshener company called Handstands. We would like literally sell the air fresheners and like Armor All and like all this random stuff.
Uh-huh.
But same type of deal. Like I was working this warehouse, didn't love it, and then all of a sudden we find out that the company's being shut down, and you have this chance for this severance bonus. And I was like,
Oh.
dude, perfect. That's my out. I took the severance, bought some more gear, and then I was like, I'm gonna be a freelance creative, and jumped headfirst into that whole world. But
Oh, no way. Yeah, that's like identical. I think I do
yeah,
remember
did we talk
talking
about
about
that?
this. Yeah, but I didn't remember it until just now when you said it. But
Yeah,
yeah, that's so funny.
yeah,
It's
that's
just like,
interesting. But
I mean, it's like, it feels like God is giving you a chance on a silver platter a little bit. It's like there's
oh
no
yeah,
better time to do it, especially like at our age then too. Not a lot of
mm-hmm.
responsibility.
Yeah, you get a little bit of like a long runway in a sense financially, and you're like, hey, you've got however much time it is, see if you can make something happen in that amount of time where, you don't maybe have to stress about money as much as you would otherwise, but
Hmm.
it's interesting.
And the
So when
buy-in
you,
is, I was just gonna say the
yeah,
cost of getting started is like not too expensive.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
especially like, because I started, oh, that's another similarity. I started with the A6300.
Oh yeah.
Um, so just like a little less video focused camera, right? From what I
Hmm.
remember, I could be way off, but I think my sister ended up getting that 6500, so I used that a little bit. But
Yeah.
yeah, like nothing crazy expensive, but good enough. Where that was kind of like the dawn of the mirrorless world too, where you were like, these little powerhouse cameras can actually do a decent amount for the money, you know,
Hmm.
as
Oh,
far as
totally.
like what was normal maybe in the industry back then.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Especially for photo.
Yeah.
Photo is cheap.
Yeah, photo, and then yeah, that with a little gimbo, and you can shoot as many weddings as you want, right?
Yeah, really. Well,
It's back then.
and it's funny too, like, when we shot Prism, um, we just had like a camera like that on a gimbal.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like on some of our shoots, it's like we have so much gear.
Mm.
And I ask myself all the time, like, are we really making anything better than we could with just like the cheap gear? Like, I think
Yeah.
it's such a hot market right now, and we're all getting sucked into this like days of thinking that the next best camera is going to actually help us when in reality it's just a tool.
Yeah. Yeah, that brings up an interesting point, because when we were shooting Prism, did you have an Sony A7S III? Is that what you were on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
You had the A7S III. What was I on? Something
You had the
similar?
A1.
Oh, that's right. I just got the A1. Yeah. Yeah. So we were like really similar bodies for video. Like we could totally match them really well.
Yeah,
But dude, it
definitely.
seemed like post that shoot, you went from A7S III to, next thing I know, you had like the Ronin 4D shortly after, right?
Well, that's that's from and this is where the gear does help, right? Because
Yeah.
we totally like struggled on that shoot.
Mm-hmm.
And just to let everyone know, on this shoot, we really wanted to get like backwards facing shots, shooting from one rider to another, so that like the camera was moving, kind of like if you were having a it's not a zip line or a cable cam.
Yeah.
Um, and so we rigged up this like backpack frame. We put the RS1 on there or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and then had the little Sony on there. And remember, we had to like, I think we were using gyroscope mode on an iPad
Yep.
to control it, and our range was like 30 feet or
Yeah.
something. And on top of it, on those shoots, it's like we're covering so much ground, it's like hard to tuck in and not be seen. So then on top of it, I had to hide in a bush somewhere at the middle point so we could get like the
Mm-hmm.
longest stretch.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, it worked, but it was like super painful.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
kudos to you. Like, you'll have to shoot me a photo and I'll plug it into the conversation here. But it was like the Frankenstein rig of all Frankenstein rigs that I'd love to actually build on, because I feel like you're like the master of hard mounted stuff. But yeah, that was his, because then it didn't have a bunch of like wild clamps on it too, to make sure that, like the gimbal was solid. But even then, every time we set it up, it was like, dude, this is,
it was sketchy.
this far away from just breaking and falling apart and dropping your camera or whatever it was. But
Yeah, I think we had like three different points that it was all connected to. But yeah, we'd like finish a run and, mountain biking, there's a lot of jiggling going on and we'd check it afterward and like one of the screws would be totally loose or something.
yeah,
Like we had to have so many safeties because it was just such a sketchy setup.
yeah, very janky,
Very
but
jingy. But it
it turned
worked.
out cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
with a few tries. But no, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Cause so that then led you to like, hey, let me go get a tool that will actually do this maybe a little more effectively in the Ronin.
hmm Well, and right after that shoot, I got hired because of that job
Mm,
to rig up an interview. They wanted to like interview someone on horseback from
that's right.
horseback.
Mm,
Um, and so we put the 4D on that same backpack rig I had. And they couldn't get me like a electric bike or any way to get to where they were going, but they could drive me like pretty far away. So they drove me to this point where I was like seriously like a mile away. Like could barely, they're just dots on a hill. And
mm.
I'm like pulling focus and aiming the camera while
No
they're
way.
conducting the interview on horseback, and I am just so far away.
Wow.
And that was when I was like, yep, this is it. Like there's no way like I could ever go back to the other setup.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, what could have been a few weeks ago in the desert on bikes?
Yeah, could have been. Yeah, I remember Ian just being like,
Hmm.
dude, why didn't you buy this camera before? And I was like, I didn't know.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that was, what year was that?
I mean, that was probably 2021 or 2022, maybe.
2021, 22.
Yeah.
It's crazy that camera, I mean, because you still use it, right? And it
Oh, yeah.
stayed as relevant as it is for as long as it has. Because I remember when that thing first came out, there was a lot of skepticism of like, is this actually the move? A lot of kind of like form factor questions. And is it too much in one package? Is it, does it meet a quality threshold that it's advertising? All these kind of like worries that it might have had.
Yeah, I had a ton of bugs. Like the first year it was out, it had so many bugs. Because they just classic DJI, they just released it and then they were like, we'll fix it later kind of thing.
Hmm. Okay.
But I think also the look of it and then some of the limitations it has, like, really made all the high-end filmmakers, like, not even look at it seriously. But then I think it was almost like too high of price for maybe like the budget YouTuber
Mm,
cinematographers at the time.
okay.
So it was kind of this weird sweet spot where like no one was buying it. Um, and it was kind of awesome actually because no one had it.
Mm,
And I think it actually helped me a lot because it was like an added bonus of hiring me as a cam op or a DP was like, oh,
yeah.
we're gonna get this cool camera that no one has and get to, use it.
Yeah. That's super interesting because you basically just said it'll do these things super well and that's what I need it for. So I'm going to be an early adopter, regardless of maybe some of the worries that, more established DPs or people that have been in the industry a little longer have, and just kind of
Hmm.
double down on its pros. And then that opened up other areas of opportunity for you.
Yeah. And I doubled down because I didn't know any better, right?
Mm,
Like I was like, so what if you're always shooting gimbal style? Like that's great. And it's, and then you become a more advanced cinematographer and you're like, actually really sucks to shoot everything stabilized. Like your
mm,
video is gonna look boring and low energy.
mm.
Um, so, I think there were some like in some ways it like maybe made me get hired on things that I didn't deserve to be there for, like a little premature in my
Okay.
career, I think.
Yeah.
Um, just because they wanted someone who could operate the camera. So that in some ways is a plus, but then I think the negative was that I I wasn't like realizing maybe like the lack and the holes in my cinematography because I was using one camera that was really good at like one thing.
Mm, okay. Would you say like to the point where you were almost using it as a crutch? Like, is that a good way to put it, or are you kind of thinking a little different?
I think it was like a limiter for me
Mm, okay.
a little bit
Gotcha.
because it was better than the Sony, so I kind of like stopped using the Sony. But then I was like all the stuff I was shooting was just like I was just feeling like it didn't have energy and like it was just everything was too smooth, and I think for action sports it's so important to like show the energy and have like the shaky cam shots and stuff.
Yeah.
And then use the stabilizer when you need it and use it more as like a individual tool rather than you know, rather it be everything you use.
Yeah. How
Um,
were you able to figure out like a workaround as you kind of started to develop that eye or that skill set where you're like, hey, I want more of the organic camera shake, where you're like, okay, let's make this tool work? Or at that point where you're like, no, I need a new body.
yeah, last year I used it. Like there is a mode where you can put it in like sport mode, and then it's kind of like, super stiff and pretty responsive, I would say.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, so I was kind of using it that way for like handheld. But the issue is like that camera is very heavy. It's very awkward to carry. And even in the stiff sport mode, it would still have a little like gimbal drag going on. So it was kind of like this weird smoothed out handheld look, which sometimes I thought looked really good, but then other times just felt like still kind of robotic. So when the price dropped on the Komodo X, I ended up purchasing that for more of my like A-cam handheld stuff.
Nice.
Um,
And that was fairly recent, right? That you picked up
mhm.
the Komodo X.
Yeah, that was probably I think that was October of last year.
Okay. And this was
Yeah.
the driving motivator was like something that's a little like you can kind of impose your look and style and build it out how you see fit rather than being boxed into what maybe you felt like with the Ronin 40.
Yeah. I feel like the issue I was finding was like the Ronin 4D is really good for all these, specialty camera shots where it's like we can put it on the back of a car, get like arm car looking shots. We can run with it and it'll look stable, like any sort of gimbal work. And then, on top of it, you can put the 4D Flex head on and use it as like a quick little jib on a monopod.
Hmm.
Like all those shots are awesome, but the issue I was finding and my editors were pointing this out was like you don't have any of these like nice tights or these like other handheld style moments to like pair with it. And once, they kind of pointed that out, I started kind of like realizing it and being like, okay, and part of it was just like, I think if you're using a gimbal, it's hard to try to like switch your brain and be like, okay, let's do a handheld shot with this gimbal, you know?
Yeah.
Like it
You're
just
just like
doesn't.
constantly thinking, leverage the gimbal, leverage the stabilization, as much movement as possible, constantly kind of thing.
Yeah. And yeah, I was just realizing it was taking the energy out of the edits too. Like it just, if everything's smooth, it's like it doesn't really feel like whatever the action is that intense, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
So without those like jittery, tight, close up, high energy shots, it just felt kind of weird.
Hmm.
Um, and then,
That makes a lot of sense.
the global shutter, I think, on the Komodo X2 was like a big thing for me, because the rolling
Okay.
shutter on the 4D it's not the worst, but it's not the best either.
Okay.
Um,
That's
yeah,
interesting. So yeah, now since you've been using the Komodo X for the last, what's it been, 6 months?
yeah, or less, like 4 months.
Okay. What's
Yeah.
kind of been, yeah, 4 months in, your thoughts?
Um, I personally think I maybe did myself a disservice by, and like I've had a bunch of friends get into cinematography also, and they do the same thing. It's like for some reason everyone gravitates toward getting a gimbal right away.
Hmm.
And I think it's like the gimbal shots are nice for certain things, it's kind of like having a drone too. It's like it is nice to have, one ultra wide establishing shot. But as far as like telling a story, having emotion, having feeling, like I don't think gimbals really, like I don't think that's what they do. So I think I did myself a disservice by maybe like jumping from the handheld straight to a gimbal too early and not developing some of the skills that you learn with a handheld. Like I think just, it sounds easy, but like shooting your tights, mediums and wides and like really making those perfect and focusing on your picture rather than focusing on what is the coolest, most insane looking shot I can get. Like I think that's where my head was always at the
Hmm.
beginning of like what's going to be the shot that's going to like blow people's minds, and like obviously you still want that, but if you don't have all the other basic necessities in there, then it's kind of like it doesn't it's still not going to look good in the end, because in the end like story is king.
Yeah, trying to evoke some type of an emotion that's not just like, oh, that was cool from like all your cinematographer homies, right? Of like, how do
Right.
you do that? You know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no one else is going to care.
all of
Or
us
think
other
about it.
camera dorks are then sliding into your DMs like, how the heck did you figure this out? Like, what's the behind the scenes clip on this thing? But
Yeah.
yeah, no, that makes sense. But client and like general viewers are maybe just left wanting a little more is kind of
Mhm.
the thoughts you had.
Yeah, I mean, I was seriously like, I was building out my storyboard so backwards. I would think of like one shot that I thought was really cool and then try to build a story around that
Around
with
that whole
other,
frame.
yeah, with like other really cool, specific niche shots, and not even be like, what is the emotion we're trying to evoke? What is the story we're trying to tell? It would just be
Mm,
like, what's gonna look cool for 2 seconds,
yeah, yeah, for sure. No, that makes sense. That's
So,
interesting. That's cool to kind of see like maybe more of the behind the scenes because I feel like obviously we met when it was not beginner Marcus, but it was like maybe a little more. I feel like casual is not the right word, but it kind of feels correct in the sense of like you weren't as serious as you are now. That's for sure. Like
I mean, that.
stage one Marcus is I feel like who I met, and now after watching you kind of like just go crazy for the last 3 4 years, it's like, dude, I'm talking to a whole different Marcus of like so much experience and so much like growth from that point, which is cool to see because I feel like the rate at your growth was like crazy in the grand scheme of how I see other creatives developing. But
Wow. Well, I mean, that's super nice. I mean, you did see beginner you definitely saw a beginner version of me because you were the first person I ever had to help me on a shoot.
Hmm.
Like I had never any other shoot before then, it was always only me, like doing everything pretty much.
Yeah.
So I remember even that shoot with you, like navigating, like, oh wait, I can like kind of like explain the action, and then he's also gonna get a shot, or like he's gonna
Yeah.
help, like we can work on getting gear ready together. Like it was so cool.
Hmm.
I was like, this is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
That
Get
brought,
out of the run and gun one man team kind of vibe.
oh, totally. I mean, that's why cinematography is so fun in a lot of ways, is like being able to work with your friends and your homies and go out there and make something together is so special and so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's interesting to hear your experience with a range of gear too. It reminds me, we had a conversation with Bryce Harper Smith. You know Bryce, Harkin
Yeah.
Films.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's
He's a
awesome.
really talented DP too, and we kind of talked through a similar thing where he feels like he's kind of maybe dabbled in a range of production values, and
Mm,
he kind of finds himself gravitating down a little bit in production value to be more lean with like, maybe it's a little lighter crew, maybe it's less expensive of a camera, but more focused on that story aspect and focused on getting good shots at the cost of high production value, right? Like he's not dragging a slider around everywhere he goes or a full like cinema lens kit or whatever it is. He's kind of like hit that range and then going, let me like tailor it back. I'm gonna hang out right here. This is like my sweet spot. So do
right.
you feel like, I feel like you've experienced a lot more of that range, right? Do you feel
Sure.
yourself kind of coming down or still wanting to like push the value higher and higher? Where do you feel
Mm,
like your sweet spot might lie for like your career? Maybe not fully moving forward, but at least for now, do you have kind of an area you like to operate in?
Um, yeah, I mean, I I haven't personally DP'd a ton of like big shoots. Um, I think we did have one big one in October, but it was only because we had like 20 extras and like a full G&E team and stuff.
Mm,
And that was really cool. I think that's a good question. I think for outdoor stuff, I would rather have like a very nimble crew. Um, because you start adding people and like moving to locations is becomes really hard. And like I think one thing that I want to do that I see Bryce, that I see Camp 4 doing is like they're keeping these small crews and then they're going to like really sick locations
mm,
that are hard to get to.
yeah.
Like even the shoot we did for Wildhorn, like I don't think we could have had a massive crew out at Green River,
Oh yeah.
and like it would have been a lot of trucks, then we would have had to figure out bathroom situation. Like I don't know, the smaller amount of people, the less you have to think about these things that will just add and add to the budget.
Mm-hmm.
And then you won't even be able to go to like as cool of a place too. So
Yeah,
like
for
I'm
sure.
like one my friend Nathan McBride, who I work with some, like I think one thing he does really well is he plans out a scene, he plans out the shot list. It's only gonna take like maybe 4 hours to shoot it, but getting there is probably gonna take like the rest of the 12-hour day.
Mm,
Um, so he'll choose these like super hard locations to get to where we're hiking in. Like the last one, we were like hiking in gear, and then we had to rappel multiple times to get to this
oh wow.
canyon. And then we shot for like an hour and a half, and that was it.
Dang.
And it was a very big day, but it was all worth it because like the location was so incredible for the scene that it just made shooting it there like so easy, you know?
Mm, yeah.
Like I think if you really do all the pre-pro, like you don't need that much time to shoot, and if the location is epic, then you don't need that much time.
Yeah.
Um, so I think for outdoor shoots, I want to keep it small and pretty nimble. Like I like having everyone be kind of a Swiss Army knife, where like you get on some of these bigger sets and it's like, nope, I'm here to bring the coffee. That's all I'm gonna do. Or like I'm here
Mm-hmm.
because I'm the cat person. We had like a cat on a shoot one time.
The cat handler.
The cat whisperer. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Um,
No, that's interesting. What roles in a lean team do you feel like needs to be filled? Like if you're going to give someone a blueprint and say, this is ideal in Marcus's head.
Mm-hmm. I think producer and a first AC. And I think having a PA is like always an incredibly good asset to have on set. And like, I had a college kid offered a PA for me one time and he absolutely crushed it. We hiked like 6 miles with gear that day. And I told him beforehand, I was like, dude, I want you to come, but I just straight up that like we have no budget to pay you. And he was like, no, I just want to do it to like for the experience and to hang out.
That's
And
cool.
like he was like the happiest, like most energetic person on set the whole day, and he carried like all the batteries. So
For
and
six
water.
miles.
Yeah, poor guy.
Dang, of all the heaviest things.
All the heaviest things, but he crushed it. And like looking back, I was like, I don't think we could have done it without him.
Mm, yeah.
So I think having a PA, which is really not too hard to find, is very useful because it's always going to be more work than you think, and you're always going to wish you had an extra pair of hands.
Yeah. Especially one that is willing to just do whatever, like you said.
Yeah, yeah,
Help
exactly.
in whatever capacity.
But
Gotcha.
I
So,
think, I think, yeah, producer,
go.
yeah, and then sorry, producer, DP, cinematographer, AC, and a PA. I think if you
Cool.
have those, you're gonna be set outside.
Gotcha.
If
And
you're
then as far as
inside,
directing role, would DP take that, or is that like kind of a co-partnership gig between producer and DP of like, let's work this together?
um, yeah. So my buddy Nick Carnazzo, which I think you know too, or maybe know
Yeah.
of.
Yeah. I think maybe I've met him once or twice, but haven't necessarily worked with him super close, but I know him.
Hmm. He's been kind of like producing all the stuff for my company Alpenglow,
Hmm.
and then just hiring himself as the director, which has been great. Like I think mostly what I need out of a director is like, really watching talent and making sure they're not doing something weird or
Hmm.
awkward because I'm so focused on the picture that I don't usually notice things like that.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, I'm like directing the picture side of things. So Nick has been like directing more and like kind of telling like the athlete or model like, okay, this is what your action is like, and then it's like, all right, let's do it again, like more excited, less excited, stuff like
Yeah.
that. And like having someone like that to just kind of like move things along. I mean, he's almost like a first AD also because he's like keeping us on schedule and
Hmm.
keeping things moving. And he'll be like, Marcus, we got it. Like, stop. We've been trying to get the shot for like an hour. Like, one of those are going to work.
Yeah. That's
So
awesome.
yeah, it's good to have someone like that for sure.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah.
think that's helpful too because I think I fall into this trap a lot, and I think a lot of people do right out of the gates is this mindset of like I can do it all. Like the more experience that you have in the industry, the more you've shot XYZ. It's like I figured out the last 2 years of shoots on my own. Like I can keep doing it, and I can keep making this amount of money, and whatever that looks like for you.
Hmm.
What advice would you give of like the sooner you flip that switch, the sooner things really start to work for you? Or do you feel that way? Maybe you're like, no, dude, I too big of a
No,
crew. I got too many mouths to feed, or whatever that looks like. But
no, yeah, I think there's this weird possessiveness that creators will like have at the beginning of their career for some reason, which it should be the opposite because like you suck at that point. So
yeah,
why are you trying to do it all yourself?
yeah,
Like the best
obsessing over
advice,
trash.
yeah, it's like you think you've been doing it like and I'm speaking from myself. Like I've 1 year in was like, no, I'm gonna do the edit. I'm gonna do everything. And like looking back, I'm like, I wasn't good. So like, why did I want to be so possessive over it? And like, I think it's easy to look at it from maybe a numbers game too, and be like, oh well, if I hire people, then I start losing money technically.
Hmm.
But it's like, if you think about it from the standpoint of like, those people need to exist. So you're not losing money, you're just hiring people. And like, those people need to exist so that you can do your job correctly and get more work. Like, I think you almost have to look at it as like an investment opportunity of
Mm.
like, I'm going to bring these people on who hopefully know more than I do. Like, there's no shame in bringing on people who are way more talented than you. Like, I'm never on a shoot thinking, like, oh, I could do better, or like, in my head talking down on them. Like, if anything, I'm just like, I want to help, and I want to like give my resources and give them the knowledge I have so they don't have to go through the same pain that I did. So I think the best thing you can do is hire someone who's better than you and more knowledgeable, and yeah, just not assume that you can do it all yourself. Like, it's a team effort, and you're also just going to have way more fun and be less stressed. I feel like I was so stressed on some of those, first shoots, and then I would not be fun to be around, and then people don't want to work with you. Like,
Hmm.
I think
And your work
it's
suffers too. Like I
your
think
work
some of that
suffers.
translates through.
Totally. I mean, it's so easy to forget that when you're, pushing a button on a product that you're supposed to do it in this certain sequence. And like that stuff matters because if you do it wrong, the company can't use it.
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
you burn that bridge and you lost a portfolio opportunity too. And any future work.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really healthy outlook. I think oftentimes you can almost view gigs or clients as like one-time opportunities, right? Of like, oh, sick, I landed that project. And then once the project's done, it's like, now I need to go find a new client, new project,
Hmm.
new everything. But if you're able to just execute exactly on the vision, I think you kind of underestimate the power of like reoccurring work, right? And if you have a good,
Hmm.
lean, capable team, you're just going to increase the likelihood of more repeat work from the same people. And I think
Yeah.
that's super powerful too, because the more you can establish that relationship, the more it's like, yeah, we've done this a dozen times. We're just going to do the same thing we did, last quarter. It's like, perfect. We got you. And there's that trust. And then, you can just, like what you're saying, it's a mixture of both quantity and quality increased by investing in a team that's, capable and just good at what they do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like the trust thing, like you're saying, is so important to the client because they don't want to like go take a risk on someone they haven't worked with. Um, and they're spending all this money and there's really no guarantee. Like there's nothing in the contract that's like, well, if this sucks, like we're not going to pay, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
they know they're paying no matter what.
Yeah.
Um,
And they're kind of rolling the dice a bit as they do it.
yeah.
Yeah. How do you go about, because I think people at a certain level could say, well, I could always find someone to PA for me, right? Like I could always find someone that's maybe looking for some experience or looking for an opportunity where I can share a little bit of knowledge or, you got a friend or a family member or whatever that looks like. How do
Mhm.
you recommend that people find individuals that are on par or a little above in a skill level or like a competence level so you can say, hey, come be a part of my production for blah blah blah. I want to learn from you, but I have these skills to, add to it as well. Like what does that dynamic look like of basically just building a team and networking along the way with people that will kind of potentially lift you in a sense?
Hmm. I mean, I think if you're looking for PAs, then uh, I don't think there should be any expectation on their skill level,
For sure.
um,
Yeah.
because they're kind of there to just be hands.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was like really scared to have a PA, from like an email inquiry, like someone emailed our website, which was
Oh,
awesome.
nice. Yeah.
Don't get too many of those. And they're like, hey, is there like an internship, you know?
Oh, cool.
And I was like, we're not that big, but you can come PA.
We've led you astray. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is like two people.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but that college kid came and like crushed it. But as far as like PAs go, I feel like people in your circle who are just like wanting to get on set more. And like there's a lot of people who have good experience who will PA because I mean I think PAing is really valuable because you get to go on set and kind of have a relatively probably chill job and get to just like
Yeah.
observe. So that would be my advice to people who like want to get into cinematography is just like reach out to people who you think are like doing really well in it, and then just be like, hey, I'll PA, I'll come out for free. Like I just want to see how things are done and help out.
Yeah. And
Um,
sorry, maybe I phrased that weird. I was saying, like, I agree with you on everything you've said about PAs. Um, that's probably a role that's a lot easier to fill, like you're saying. What about someone like, I want a high level producer or I want a high level DP if you're maybe filling more of a director role or an AC, like you had mentioned? How do you go about maybe kind of like finding talent in those spheres that require a little more expertise,
mm,
especially when it comes to like the results of a project, right? You're like, hey, I want a really good fill in the blank. How do you find someone if you're still getting into like the team building stage in a sense?
um, that's a good question. I mean, as far as like hiring a team, I really only am in charge of like my AC, and then if we're gonna hire like a gaffer, I'll get to choose the gaffer and stuff
Mm,
too. Um, but then the producer will usually like hire out the rest of the team. And
gotcha.
it kind of depends. Like, when I work with other production companies as a DP, like, then they hire everyone else, like, besides the AC, essentially.
Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
but I think just seeing who is in your community is always, and seeing what work they're putting out is always a good thing to do. And then just like, sounds dumb maybe, but like, you know, commenting on their stuff on social media, just like showing support and that you like approve of what they're up to, I think is like a great way to start a conversation so that when you do eventually maybe like want to ask them a question about lighting or ask them if they want to help on a job that you're on, like then you kind of already have this rapport of like, hey, I think you're killing it. Can you come kill it on my set as well?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it
I
can
think
be
that's great
difficult.
advice.
I think,
Yeah,
getting coffee and stuff like it. People are busy, and sometimes it's hard to nail down coffee and stuff like that. But it never hurts to try. I think just showing that you're interested in what they're doing is like the best way to get your foot in the door.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I think it almost ties back into like us getting tossed in a car and driving to central Utah, right? Of just like, you've probably got more in common than you might think. And if you're each
Hmm.
stoked on each other's work, then that's a great kind of like first step in seeing what else can come from that potential connection. So,
Hmm. 100%. And I
yeah.
think being like humble, like even if you're not that far in your career, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be reaching, like that's even more of a reason to be reaching out to people who are killing it and doing way better than you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, for sure.
like I feel like I'm always reaching out to production companies and stuff, and it's not like me being like, hey, like can I work for you? Like
Mm,
you want to hire me sometime? It's me just being like, hey, your guys' stuff is awesome. Like that one shot you guys did, killer. Like keep doing it. Like I'm gonna be watching all your behind the scenes videos.
mm, yeah.
Like I think that's why Salt Lake is so cool because like if
Mm,
you work with people in LA, it's like I'm gonna do my job as well as possible while making you look bad at your job.
mm.
It's not really like a team effort in my mind,
Okay.
but you work. But I feel like everyone in Salt Lake is just kind of like cheering each other on, and we all
Yeah.
just want to bring each other up.
Yeah, I feel like I've noticed that too. I can't necessarily speak to how like the LA culture is, but it does feel like Salt Lake for some reason has a pretty good like sample size of talented creatives, you know? And it's cool because I grew up here, so like unlike you, I just was kind of born in it in a sense, but
Hmm.
why do you think that is? Like I have my own ideas, but I'm curious picking your brain with having you come from Washington,
Mm,
and part of that might have been school, but like, yeah, what is it about Salt Lake that you think has kind of turned it into a little bit of a creative hub?
um, I mean, I think it's the locations and
Mm,
the environments and how much diversity we have here. Like you can drive 4 hours north and be in Jackson Hole and shoot the Tetons. You can drive 4 hours south and be in like a ton of different alien looking landscapes. There's just so much. And then on top of it, all those cool landscapes, or a lot of them, are like BLM
mm,
land. So
yeah.
permitting is easier, and I think that's why so many car commercials are shot out here. It's like because they can actually pull it off, and the terrain is cool,
Yeah. Yeah. That's where my
Well,
head went too. I feel like growing up here, I was way more into team sports. And
mm,
then the older I get, the more I'm like, dude, you got to take advantage of Utah because there's so much diversity. There's so much to see in like a really small geographical area, like no matter what small is to you, it's like you get here and like you mapped it all out. You can, drive in a 6 hour radius and experience what feels like different countries almost. So,
mhm. Oh, totally. Yeah.
yeah,
And I think it's so young too, which is really cool.
like the demographic here,
Well, yeah,
young
I think like
creators.
the film community, like obviously
Oh,
there's always been like people who are in cinematography here, but I just think it's like just now starting to kind of like get momentum and blow up a little bit more.
mm-hmm.
But it's not like we're all scraping by, so it's not like maybe as cutthroat as LA is.
Yeah. And I feel like the infrastructure is following too. Like I had a buddy, Bryce, actually, he just recently moved back to Arizona. And he's like, dude, I don't have rental houses down here. Like I don't have other creatives that I can like lean on. I don't have like any of that infrastructure that you think
Mm,
LA obviously has, but then to your point, Salt Lake seems to just keep on leaning into that creatively, which is super nice. Super nice for people getting into it too. Like, hey, I want to go test this piece of gear. Or, hey, pick someone's brain on permitting or whatever questions you might have. So
yeah, totally. Yeah,
cool.
there's a lot of stuff here. I feel like the rental houses, like especially Redfinch, like some people maybe feel differently about Redfinch, but like I think it's such a cool way to test out gear, to rent gear. Like anyone can go. You don't have to have, in production insurance and stuff, which is like just something that feels impossible when you're
Mm.
new. So
Oh
it's a
yeah,
nice like first step into that bigger production level, I feel like.
yeah, yeah. I agree, and it's nice having people with expertise to go like pick their brains too, right? Like the
Hmm.
the individuals running those rental houses or even like camera stores. I feel like Picture Line was a big help for me when I first got into it, where I was like, dude, I don't know anything, and I'm only learning so much on YouTube. It's nice to have like a face-to-face interaction with someone that I can rattle off questions rather than like let my fingers search the interwebs like crazy of like what is
Oh
an
yeah.
ND filter when I first started or whatever that looks like. You just walk into a store and some guy's like, this is everything you need. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's a godsend. So,
Seriously. Seriously.
yeah.
What's funny about them is they're like my personal assistant. Like I have their phone number and I'll just
Mm,
text them like, "Hey, can you order me this?" And they'll be like, "Yep, it's on its way." And like
perfect.
then they'll let me know when it's there and like
Yeah.
it's a really sick resource for sure.
Yeah.
They're awesome over
That's
there.
nice.
Yeah.
Another, actually, along those same lines that I feel like I use a lot is the B&H chat. Like if I have
Oh
gear
yeah.
questions, that I think that's one of those things that I probably wish I would have learned a lot sooner of like they're so helpful, quick to respond. Obviously they sell everything, but even if you just want to pick their brains on like, hey, how's this work? They're usually like super helpful to just jump on it, give you the answer fairly quickly, and then you're off to the races.
That's good to know. I honestly haven't really used it that much, but
Mm. Yeah,
that's
I
that's
feel
awesome.
like they're solid. It kind of reminds me of like backcountry gearheads, like their
Yeah.
chat support thing, where it's like I can get in touch with an expert in whatever category they have and just get straight to the source, somewhat, I guess. But I can't go
Right.
pick it up locally like Picture Line, which is nice. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what I usually do is I send picture line B&H photo links.
oh, there you
I'm
go.
like, hey, order this.
This is
I'll
what I
buy it
need.
through you guys. Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Cool. Well, let's review some of your work. I know we talked about this a
Oh
little bit
yeah.
before, but yeah, if you pull up a few of your projects and then just hit that little share button, present at the bottom, I
Oh,
can pull
cool.
it up, watch it live, and then kind of give it a quick review. But yeah, this is something. While you're pulling that up, I'll just kind of give a little bit of context to it. So
Hmm.
this is something we've been doing on the last few episodes, but obviously Marcus has a ton of like super awesome work that we're all stoked on. But I just asked him to pull up a couple of them that maybe have like some cool, unique stories or projects that he's particularly proud of, and we'll watch it live here and then just kind of hear a little bit of the backstory. It's almost like a BTS edit, but with your voice. So just picture it like that.
So am I narrating basically?
You don't have to narrate. We can just watch it quietly, or if you see something live, we don't have a strict outline for this thing, but whatever
Yeah.
feels normal. The last few we've just watched in silence and then talk about it at the end. But if you
Okay.
want to pause and say this shot, we could break it down. Totally up to you.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think watching it all the way through probably makes sense. Let's go to Prism. To make it full screen.
There it is.
Wild
Haven't,
horn.
haven't seen that in a while.
That's a classic.
Yeah. What's cool too is go back a little bit on like the credits there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fun. It's cool that Mason was a writer in that, and now he's like full blown photographer too.
Yeah. Yeah, and he'll shoot. He's actually shot on a couple Alpenglow things too.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
So yeah, full
Yeah.
circle on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Kind
know,
of break down the project for us though. What stands out to you?
well, one thing that's really funny because, earlier I was like talking about how like I was so focused on getting certain shots that I was like doing myself a disservice by not learning like what are all the shots I need for a story?
Mm. Yeah.
And like this is a perfect example. Like there's so many, oh my God, it's so loud. Like everyone should know that Ryan shot like 75% of this project, and the only shots I got were like the gimbal tracking shots.
No, you
And
got all the bangers. I just had like the filler stuff.
but like I would have been totally effed in the edit if you hadn't been there getting all these other angles and shots.
Mm.
Like
That's
so
funny, dude.
many of them are yours. Like it would have been just like one continuous gimbal shot.
Just one long reverse POV.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny, dude.
So I think this is a really good example of like, yeah, just getting a variety of things to really tell that story and have like the motion. Because like let's see, where is it? There's a shot where that was yeah, what was his name again?
Taylor Holtby.
Taylor.
Yeah.
Taylor. Awesome dude. Really good writer. But like in this shot, it's cool because let me mute this. He's like
There you go.
cooking, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But if the whole, and this shot too is similar, it's like if the whole thing felt like that and we didn't have shots like even like this, to just show like the speed, like just
Yeah.
going through frame or like tracking there through the trees, like it would have just felt so smooth, and then it would have just felt like it had no energy because it wouldn't have felt very
Mm-hmm.
intense.
Especially with mountain biking where sometimes your speed, it's hard to translate speed, like you can feel like you're ripping down a trail And if you're
Hmm.
just stuffed at the bottom of the trail shooting them like come at you, even though they're cooking, it can feel so slow, in the actual shot. So I think to your point, adding like all these different angles and more motion blur in this and a tight there and wide drone here, you
Hmm.
can get more of that energy as to like what the writer's actually feeling and what you hope that the viewer is actually feeling as well.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that was just a learning moment, and I probably didn't even realize that about this project until just now, but
Hmm.
um like all the shots you got were the missing pieces it took another year after this to probably really like hone in on and figure out like what are all these different shots that actually tell a story and make you feel something.
Hmm. That's cool.
Um, but yeah, I mean the as far as concept, like they were just like I remember Ian, who's actually in this frame, he's the director of Wildhorn.
Yeah.
He was like, "Yeah, we got these new bike helmets coming out." And I was like, "Cool, like what's new about them?" And he was like, "We have a lot of colors." I was like, "Okay, so that's your selling point is there's like a lot of colors."
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think I was like still kind of new to Utah, and I was like, well, we have a bunch of different colored locations, and you have nicely colored helmets. Like, let's just match them up and, have a different helmet for every environment.
Yeah.
And I think they had like way more colors than this. These were just like the three main ones.
Yeah. A few key ones. So kind of the gray dirt that is Green River,
Hmm.
Red Rock into Richfield, and then just some good lush green in American Fort Canyon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was my first time really like I feel like directing like an actual crew or
Yeah.
tr attempting to. I don't think I
No, I
was
feel
like
like
really. I don't think I
I
was
feel like you did
directing
a
too
great
much.
job.
Really?
Yeah, no, I think you did really well. I feel like
Yeah.
that's one thing that I've been really impressed with you over the years, not just on this project, but in some of the other projects that I've worked with you too, is like I feel like you just work super well with people. Like
Mm,
you're a likable dude. I think you keep the vibes high on set. Like you're always cracking a funny joke, but never at the expense of someone else. Like it's
mm.
just like a good kind of multiplying effect on the crew, which I feel like I felt on this Prism shoot too. It was like this is a fun guy to work with. I know I just met him, but
Aw.
Marcus is dope.
Aw. Dude, I
There
had
you
fun
go.
with you too. It was a good time.
No, that's good. How do you feel
Um,
like this project has like withstood the test of time, I guess, because it's a few years old. And is it one of those things
yeah.
that you're like, no, I'm still proud of this. This is sick. Or, yeah, what do you think?
Um, yeah. I I'm still proud of it. I think it was way ahead of where I was.
Hmm.
And also like that's another perfect example of like bringing on someone who's going to help you. Like like I was saying, like if you hadn't shot with me, we would have gotten half or less than half of these shots, and the edit wouldn't have been near as cool. So I think this piece was way ahead of my time, and it
Hmm.
was because I had help. Yeah, I don't know if there's a lot I would change about it. I think the weird drum sound that starts, right? Let's see, on the match cut. Yeah, here. There's like this weird music. And I feel like it just kind of came out of nowhere. I don't think it fit at all. So
Okay. Yeah.
maybe editing a little differently.
Some minor tweaks here or there. That's cool though. It's cool to look back on your work and be stoked still. Cause I feel like the cool thing to say is as soon as a project's done, I'm always like, man, I could have done so much better. Da da da. You're like embarrassed of it, right?
Yeah,
But
totally.
I feel like I still stumble on stuff that I did and I'm like, that was cool. It was cool then,
Yeah,
and I'm still like, I'd still show people this, right? Even though I might take a different approach, but it can still
totally.
be like a good portfolio builder or something that you don't have to like turn your nose up to just because it's old.
Yeah, I think it's super fair to be like, yeah, I learned from this and like I'm way past it now, but I don't think you necessarily need to like be hard on yourself. It's like you didn't know. You
Yeah.
were learning. That's what every shoot's for.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
would say
for sure.
overall, fairly proud of this one. I think I also hired a colorist for the first time, and he did a really awesome job matching all the footage. I mean, we had two Sonys and GoPro footage, which is really hard to match with.
Hmm.
Uh, and we wanted to make it like very color focused too. So it
Yeah.
wasn't an easy task, and I think he killed it.
Yeah, for
But yeah,
sure. I'm with you. Cool, man. Yeah, that was a fun one.
yeah,
Um,
that was a really great one. I think I would have a lot more things to say if you weren't there. Then I would have
fair.
been like, I didn't get any of these other shots.
No, I feel like it was a good project where we had, yeah, good vibes all around and just kind of like elevated everyone involved. I think
Hmm.
it was a good project for, like how you've explained for yourself, but at the same time it was a rad opportunity for Ian to get his feet wet with more directing. It was cool for
Yeah.
me to be more of B cam, where in the past I had shot more mountain bike stuff as A cam, right? So it was fun kind of like trying to execute on what your vision looked like, working with, yeah,
Hmm.
some talented riders, and yeah, just a lean crew that I feel like we got a lot done in a short amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely did. I mean, I'm curious too if you have like anything you wish we would have done differently. Um, or like maybe something you really learned from this shoot.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I wouldn't necessarily change anything. I think it worked really well. I really appreciated how prepared we were, and by
Mm,
we I mean you and Ian. I feel like you guys put in a lot of pre-production work, which I'm sure you could probably look back on and say we should have done more. But I feel like from
always.
my perspective, it was nice having, hey, these are our spots on this trail. This is the location. This is how much time we have. I think it was nice being the observer and the recipient of that type of pre-production work rather than the individual that had put it in and was stressing about staying on schedule or making sure that we got what we needed at location.
Hmm.
Um, I think those experiences I probably learn and grow from more when I'm leading out in some given realm. But man, it feels so good to show up to set and just be like, "What do you need me to do?" And they're like, "Do this." I'm like, "Perfect, on there." And then once set is done, you just walk away from it. So it was probably one of the early on experiences that I had where I was just the set guy, like production days,
Mm-hmm.
that's where I was needed. Nothing before, nothing after. Got to see a cool project come out from it. I was like, this is dope. So
Oh yeah.
no, I don't think I'd critique it, but those are some of my experiences that I feel like I gained from it, which were great.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah, it is
yeah.
funny to hear that we did a lot of pre-pro because I'm like we could have done so much more.
Yeah. Budget allowing. I feel like you guys did a good amount. Huh?
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, what do you have a favorite? I was gonna do either the Rocky Talkie one or the Adidas one.
Mm. Mm. Let's do the Rocky Talkie one. I was
Okay.
stoked on that when I saw you come out with it, especially all like
Okay.
the BTS stuff and talking through some of like the camera usage. That was one I feel like I picked your brain on a lot after I saw it come out.
Cool. Yeah. That was definitely a very fun one. Cool. Yeah, let's watch it.
Money, dude. That one's so fun. I love the energy in that one. It's like you're constantly on your toes and just taking a deep breath almost.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, that one, I'm gonna be honest, we pulled that edit out of thin air because we didn't really storyboard that at all.
Oh, really?
Um, and so a little backstory. This was shot over the span of 4 days. So one for snowmobiling, one for skiing, one for the waterfall rappelling scene, and then one for kayaking.
Hmm.
Um, and it was kind of broken up into two sections. So we did like the snow section, and when we were shooting that, it was just like, hey, we need you to get video assets of people using the radio out in the wild, like basically no story, no pre-pro really, besides of like, here's the features, here's what we need to show, kind of thing.
Hmm. Okay.
And it was the same for the water section too. Like it was just like we're shooting video assets, and then I wasn't gonna do any of the editing.
And that was the
Um,
kayak water scene or the
mhm.
waterfall rappel?
uh, for both of them.
Both of those were just, we just need clips basically.
Yeah, we just need clips. So it was like, okay, here's the scene, like someone's kayaking and using the radio, someone's rappelling using the radio.
Hmm.
So I did this project and I was like, they're like, cool, yeah, we're probably gonna like make this instructional video about the new radio with it, with like talking heads and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's what you're gonna do with it? Like, we have so much cool footage in here, and you're just
Mm.
gonna make an instructional video. So I was like, I have to use this footage. I have to make something out of it. Like we already did 70% of the job. Um, so I was like editing this for months with
Hmm.
no story in mind. I was just trying to like make a compilation, and it just wasn't working at all. Um, and then finally, I can't remember how, finally like, I was like, okay, what if they're talking to each other and we just like create some voiceover stuff after and put it in post? And so we
Mm.
kind of like formed this story afterward, and we're able to like make these scenes and use, I spent like a full day going through, news YouTube videos and trying to clip out different voiceover things from the news. And yeah, it was like such a struggle actually to put this together in
Hmm.
post
That's cool.
because we did no pre-pro at all and no
Mm.
planning. So that was a
That's
good,
interesting.
yeah.
And that cut was for you. That was like director's cut basically. They didn't ask for it. Did you ever send it to them? Like, did they ever?
I offered to sell it to them for very cheap for
Yeah.
because I paid for a colorist too,
Mm.
because I wanted it to be good and I just knew I
Yeah.
wasn't going to be able to color it. So I paid out of pocket. So all I was going to charge them was the cost of the colorist.
Hmm.
And they're like, no, we don't have a use for it.
Hmm.
And I was like,
Dang,
okay,
dude.
whatever.
Yeah. That's
um,
wild. That's cool,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
And
So I feel like that's a good example of just like putting in the extra effort to make it portfolio worthy so
mm,
that it can be something you get jobs from in the future.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of where my head went, was like, well, just because you didn't necessarily close the deal with them on selling it to them, I mean, you just would have broke even, it sounds like, but that doesn't
Hmm.
necessarily negate its value or, belittle it in any way, because I'm sure it drummed up some more work potentially in the future for you. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
And I
Did
think,
any
oh, God,
did any clients off the top of your head like reference that cut and say, "We saw this, that's why we reached out," kind of thing?
so many, like
Really?
so many people. That and the Prism one
Mm,
actually, definitely.
cool.
Um, and I think it's because it's polished. Like We actually had the same colorist on those two projects.
Hmm.
Killed it
Cool.
both times, and yeah, I think putting in that extra effort definitely made me get a lot more jobs from that. So
Yeah,
that was
that's
cool.
interesting. That's super cool.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, it was a super fun project, and we got to do so many weird like rigging shots.
Hmm.
I felt like it was kind of hard because we were shooting like a product that's like this big, but in high action. So it's like, it's pretty hard to track like with a tripod and a long lens and like be tight on a radio as they're flying through the air or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of came to the conclusion of like, all right, let's just mount the camera to the radio and then we'll for sure get those shots.
Yeah.
Um, and like, for the water scenes, kayaking and the rappelling, like almost 50% of those shots are GoPro because all the
Hmm.
FPV is GoPro. And then anytime we're rigged to the radio and underwater, it's GoPro as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that blew my mind when you were saying that because I feel like at this point, were you starting to use what were you using for rigging shots? Hard mounted shots more and more.
the Sony 7S3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I saw some of these clips and I'm like, dude, how'd you do this?
Yeah.
What did that look like?
And like actually, I should still be sharing, huh? Because then we can look at this. I was gonna say, like, the one shot where we did rig the Sony 7S3, like, we held it for half a second, I think. This shot. Whoops. The shot right here.
Oh, okay.
Um, was the Sony 7S3 in water housing mounted to the front of the kayak,
Hmm.
which was like such an ordeal to get set up. Um, and like it looks good, but I'm like, does it look better than that GoPro shot or this GoPro shot? Like, I don't think you can really tell the difference,
No.
honestly. Or then like this, with water hitting it. We did use a macro lens adapter on the GoPro.
Oh, cool.
So the GoPro had to be like exactly a certain distance from the object, and you
Hmm.
couldn't like adjust that at all, right? There's no like focus on it.
Hmm.
So you had to just like figure out where the perfect spot was for the GoPro.
Interesting. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
it was like basically X amount of inches, like an inch away, 2 inches away, kind of thing.
And I was running into issues in post where like the wording, like I think for this shot in particular, the Rocky Talkie is like half in focus, half out of focus.
Hmm.
I had to do some masking in post to kind of like make it a little better.
Yeah. Sharpen it up a
Um,
bit.
and then we also had to shoot at like weird um, shutter angles too, because we couldn't put an ND over that.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that was another weird struggle. But if you're holding a shot for 1 to 2 seconds, it's probably fine.
Yeah. You can kind of get away with it.
hmm Yeah. Um, but yeah, we had a lot of fun. I think this is a very good example. Like all of these days that we shot were supposed to be half days because the client was like, we don't really need that many assets.
Hmm.
And it was kind of one of those things where it's like, well, I can't really go out to the Uintas and shoot on snowmobiles in 1.5 a day.
Yeah.
So, everyone on the team was super gracious and like worked with me on rates because the budget was definitely like very small, I would say, for
Hmm.
what we accomplished.
Yeah. Yeah. Just logistically speaking, it looks like a lot. Kind of similar how you were describing Nathan's projects of, 6 hours in, hour shoot, 6 hours out kind of thing. But
Yeah, totally. It was definitely like that. Um, yeah, especially the snowmobiling day. I know you're a big sledder, right? Sled Nick?
Do a little bit. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm like crazy big, but we do a lot of the snow bike, timber sledding style
Okay, yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that stuff is cool, but man, those machines are so heavy and like going over terrain. Um, and we only got our hands on two sleds and we had four people, so we were riding like oh no, we had five people on two sleds.
Oh wow.
So on one
Packing
sled
it
we
in.
had three people and another sled we had two, plus like all the camera equipment and pelicans and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So it was it's
It's
kind
a
of
lot.
like it was crazy. I just remember
Yeah,
my
that's
legs
fun.
being so tired by the end of the day from like hitting all the washboard
Mm.
while wearing like my heavy camera bag.
Oh yeah, that monster thing.
Yeah.
That's cool though. No, I feel like
Yeah.
this project turned out super rad. I didn't know it was a this edit specifically too was like basically a little passion project of it. So
Yeah, it was basically Spec.
yeah,
Um,
it's
and it
interesting.
took an insane amount of work in my soul to make.
That's cool. That's sweet
But
though.
yeah, it paid off. I think like now when I shoot, I always try to think of it as like an opportunity to up my portfolio.
Mm.
Um, and sometimes that means like putting extra money of your own into it. And I think that's really hard to do when you're starting, but like if you can somehow like put a little extra money or find ways to squeeze the budget so you can like honestly hiring a colorist is gonna instantly make your work look way better
Mm.
if they're talented. And
Yeah.
like I don't think too many people are necessarily always getting budgets for that, but like I mean your stuff always looks really good. I think you're an awesome colorist. But not
Yeah.
everyone has that eye, I think.
Mm. Yeah. No, I appreciate you saying that, but I feel like I'm really similar where, I see some people's work, I'm like, dang, I wish I could achieve, whatever aspect of it is that maybe I'm highlighting. I feel like that's one thing that I've really looked up to you a lot with your mounted stuff, where I feel
Uh,
like I'm always picking your brain. I'm like, dude, I don't know how to clamp this to that. Dude, you were actually the one that I pinged too when we had our daughter. I was like, how should I mount to my child? She's like 6 months old. Do you remember
oh
that
yeah,
conversation? You
I
were
do
like,
remember that.
you should not mount your camera to a baby, Ryan. I was like, you're right. Yeah, that's probably not the move.
Yeah, I was like, that sounds so unsafe.
Yeah.
That
And in
was
my head,
really
I'm just like, dude, I just want that mounted shot that you got for the Rocky Talkie deal or whatever it was. But
what were you trying to do with your baby again? Remind me. Or
I,
like what was the
I
shot?
mean, yeah, I wouldn't even call that a spec piece because I didn't want any work in that industry, but I
Hmm.
think it was just like we're both, my wife and I, new parents, and so there was kind of like this new niche or category that I was exposed to of like the newborn world.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like I think I was looking at it as like, oh, it could be a cool memory piece, like when she grows up, or a cool thing for us to look back on, or whatever it was. I spent way too much time on that, and I haven't done anything with the clips, but it was like probe lens through the crib and a mounted shot on like the diaper drawer as we like go through diapers. And I think my thought was I want to figure out a way to mount it to her and do like the little like toss her up in the air because that would
Mm-hmm.
make her giggle like crazy. So I was like, how do I mount something so that I can see her face giggling as I'm kind of tossing her around? But yeah, after talking to you, I was like, you're probably right. I shouldn't do that. So we pivoted and found some other, funny little mounted things. But
Nice. Yeah.
yeah,
It would have been cool for sure.
yeah. I mean, I've got a bunch of clips. I need to chop it up. I feel like honestly, that's one of the areas of like the whole production workflow that I struggle with the most. Probably is like I get motivated to shoot. I love
Hmm.
shooting. I like coloring too, but starting that edit, man, I like dread it constantly, and I feel like I'm noticing myself dread it more and more lately to where I'll literally shoot stuff and then I don't even touch it because I'm like I don't want to edit it. I don't like.
Yeah.
I think it's hard for me to dedicate the time to sit down with no distractions and like just get into a good flow where I can kind of piece things together. I think it's a
Hmm.
mixture of that and a mixture of a lack of pre-pro where I don't fully know what the finished project will look like. So I need to figure it out while I'm editing. And I think that kind of like initial hurdle is something that just kind of like sucks a little bit of the life out of me. So
Yeah.
that's something I need to work on. But
No, I feel that too, 100%. And I, last like April, I was still trying to do the editing, and then but I was like, I worked like 90 days straight or something, and stupid, where like I was either on production or like traveling,
geez,
and I was like doing edits in the car, on the plane, like in my hotel room after a shoot, like a full shoot day, and I was just like running myself into the ground. Um, and so I finally was like, I'm gonna just start hiring people to edit and like just just like let go. Like I feel like that was another stage of letting go and just being like, someone else. There are way better editors than me that will do this in half the amount of time.
mm,
And like, why am I trying to hang on to this? It's like you can still guide the edit from a director standpoint or a DP standpoint, but
yeah,
I think trying to do it all yourself is so hard. Um, and to your point too, that's why I like hardly ever shoot video just for fun. It's
mm,
like I love the shooting part, like you said, but I don't
yeah.
want to go edit it, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah, and I think to your point too, this is like I love editing at home at my home desk, like the big monitor. I hate editing on a laptop, dude. Like I feel like I'm like tunnel vision. Like I just have the most narrow view of like what I'm actually working with. And if I can
Totally.
get it onto one big monitor, two monitors, whatever that looks like on an at-home setup, I feel like I'm way more efficient and can enjoy the process a little bit more. But
Hmm.
then that's like just one additional hurdle I feel like I'm introducing to whether or not I'll even start the thing, you know? So it gets tricky.
It gets really tricky. I think
Yeah.
what's been helping me the most, and like I think probably everyone would stress this, is like just doing an insane amount of pre-pro and like
Yeah.
really storyboarding out, like starting with the overarching concept, go to a storyboard, into scenes, go into a shot list,
Mm-hmm.
and like really go through everything. And then one thing that Nick and I did on a recent project was we like did all that and then we shot everything on an iPhone and super simple. We didn't go to the location. We just shot it in his kitchen. All we were really seeing was like do the camera moves and placement of the camera to the subject like make sense from
Mm.
like a flow standpoint.
Okay.
And that was like incredibly valuable because like it showed us like, okay, this movement doesn't work if we want to have this other camera movement right after. So
Mm.
how do we kind of like bridge and flow and like what does the vibe feel like? And I was able to like pick the music beforehand.
Mm. Yeah.
um and then on the day of too, it was awesome. It was the shoot where we had like 20 extras, and on the day
Okay.
of it was great because Nick knew as a director exactly what we were going to do, exactly like what the talents actions were, and we could just like flow and get a lot done in a day.
That's
um
awesome.
but yeah, like that was kind of my first time doing that. We did that in like October, and now I'm like, I'm gonna at least try a couple of the shots beforehand at the very minimum, you know,
Yeah.
on top of
Yeah.
doing all the storyboarding and everything. And then
Yeah.
when
That
you
makes
get
that
to the
makes
edit,
sense.
you can just be like, just like literally look at your storyboard and I
Mm-hmm.
don't know.
Just find the matching shot that you've already planned for and drop it wherever it needs to be.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you can
Yeah. I
find
feel
the
like that's
song
the way.
before too, like even better.
Yeah. I feel like that's one thing I see Danny Gavertz do a ton. Are you familiar with him on YouTube?
Yep, totally.
Yeah. His whole. Do you remember the name of that software that he uses?
Milano.
Milanote. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
I've always been really impressed with his pre-production Milanote boards where all the music, all the shots, mood board, just general.
Yeah, his
I feel like he's
pre-pro
got it
is
all.
insane.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like
Um,
it does translate to your work too, you know.
Totally, totally. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Milanote. Not to make this an ad, but it's
Yeah.
definitely really nice to put like all of your ideas, concepts, thoughts into one big thing, and then kind of pick out like, okay, what's actually doable? Like We can only get 10 shots maybe in a day. Like we got to pick,
Yeah.
rather than doing that on the day and then running out of time for the shots you actually need or something.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm in the exact same boat. It's nice using Milanote because it's a software designed specifically for that purpose, right? And it's designed for a bunch of things because I mean, there's all like the pre-made templates for kind of a variety of stuff, but I feel like I have seen it used a lot with production based work. So it's cool that I don't know. I feel like you can always find a workaround, right? Whether it's like, I don't know, Canva or whatever it might look like not to name specifics, but I feel like it's just a matter of time before you run into a hurdle and you're like, oh man, I wish it had this. And it seems like Milanote does a good job of like, we thought about that and click on this thing, you know?
Totally. Yeah, they make it super easy. And you can like try it out for free,
Yeah.
which is really nice too.
Yeah. I like that it connects to your phone too. So when you're in the field, you can continue to reference it on the mobile app and you're not just locked into a desktop or, screenshotting stuff. And then you're like drawing on
It's messy.
photos and yeah, it
Yeah.
gets real messy.
No, it's so sick. And to just send out to your team too, like so everyone's on the same page. Like it's just so helpful.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah,
fun.
for sure. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, that's sick. That's fun to see a few pieces of your work, especially. I feel like both of those projects, like we talked about with Prism, that's a little older. The Rocky Talkie one, that one's a few years, right?
Yeah, I
Somewhere
think
around there.
a year and a half.
Because some of the recent work you've been doing, do you feel like some of the recent projects that you've been on, it's been more shoot, dump footage, leave? Is that been introduced more and more to kind of like your projects that you're taking on, or do you still feel like you've got a good balance of now you're kind of like seeing the project from the start to finish? I know we've worked, on a few projects with backcountry, where maybe that's more of the dynamic for you, where you're less involved in kind of those beginning and ending stages. Do you like that aspect of it, or you're like, nah, I wish I could stay a little more involved, and that's kind of where your agency, I guess, comes more into play?
Yeah. Man, that's a good question. Yeah, like last year, I was probably, and it's kind of a gray area with backcountry because it's like sometimes I really am just a cam op, and then other times I feel like I'm more falling into that DP role. But
Yeah.
um, it is tough with some of those projects because like as a creative, I have opinions, and as the person shooting, I have opinions on the like post part.
Mm.
But I think I struggled with that in the beginning, and then it kind of just became like a certain tipping point where I was just like and probably just another stepping stone of just like letting go and being like, this is an ad. Who cares? Like,
Mm.
as long as I do the best I can and shoot it as well as I can, like that's all I have control of. So why put other weight of things on me that I don't have control of?
Yeah.
And I not to knock any of the backcountry or anything. Like I think the backcountry especially does a killer job editing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it's really no concern there. But it is a weird feeling of being like, wow, I really am just like a cog in the wheel.
Mm.
I'm not like seeing this all the way through.
Yeah.
But it's like I can't. There's just so little time in a month or a year. I
Yeah.
can't be
Yeah.
doing that with every project. Like I would shoot 1/10 of the stuff. So I think the way I look at it is like, those shoots where I'm kind of brought on maybe more as like a hired gun to just shoot with the camera. It's like
Mm-hmm.
those are really good learning opportunities, to learn from other directors, other DPs, anyone else on set and learn how they do things. And then on top of it, see, okay, does it work? Does it not work? Do I like that style?
Mm.
Um, and so I feel like I just try to view it as a learning opportunity. And then, I take that knowledge into the projects that Alpenglow does, or that I play a bigger part in, and try to bring all those tools and use them on one project, and make it good.
Yeah. That makes a
But
lot of sense. It's like a low risk little workshop that you can kind of partake in, right?
yeah, it's paid spec.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Paid spec. That
Yeah.
sounds great. Huh?
Yeah.
No,
But
that's interesting because I feel like that could easily become one of those projects where like I hesitate saying this, but it can become less fulfilling. No specific client in mind, right? Like you
Hmm.
said, guys at Backcountry, like that whole team, they're super rad.
Oh yeah.
I've worked on other projects where I feel like I've met individuals that have been in the industry for like 20 plus years, and you can
Hmm.
tell they kind of like roll up and they're just like, it's another gig, got my day rate, peace out, here's the footage. It's what you hired me for, right? I'm out.
Hmm.
But then there's other projects where I feel like you kind of like pour your heart and soul into it. And then for me, there's more of a fulfilling component to it where you get to see it through and it's your vision that you brought to life. I guess now that you've experienced more of kind of both sides of that coin, does it feel like that to you where it's like, man, I'm just almost like punching in, punching out? It's less fulfilling? Or is it like, no, I love just making beautiful images, and capturing that, working with my camera? What's kind of your thoughts on, I guess, those two different approaches, I guess?
That is tricky because there are some jobs where I'm cam opping where it really is like I don't have any say in what's going on. Like I'm being told by the director or the DP, like, this is your camera move, this is what we're doing, this is
Mm,
the action. Like zero creativity. So I feel like for those jobs, like it's still a good learning moment because I get to see what they're gonna do and how it works, and then I see the edit and I can kind of like think back and be like, okay, that did work, or like maybe I would have done this differently.
mm.
Um,
Okay.
so on those jobs, yes, it does feel a little bit like I'm punching in and out of a clock. Um, but I feel like for the most part, but that doesn't necessarily, those aren't necessarily the jobs that I'm not editing or not playing a bigger role in. It's just the jobs where it's like everything is storyboarded and we're not going off script ever.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, and then for the jobs where like I get to DP or direct or even like cam up, like Backcountry's awesome and they let me kind of do whatever I want. If I have an idea, like as long as the director's cool with it, like I get to test a lot of ideas out with
Mm.
them, and sometimes they don't work, but then I'm like, but I know how it could work for the next time.
Yeah.
And I feel like, as long as I get to have a little bit of creativity, I feel like I'm just having fun, you know?
Mm.
But I think on some of those bigger sets where everything is very like to the T, we're not going outside of it. And partly it's because they're trying to do so much in one day and everything is so pre-approved by the client, and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
so on those ones, it's harder, but I still
Yeah.
try to just like learn as much as I can from any shoot.
That's awesome. I feel like it's a really healthy approach. And
Yeah.
that might kind of feed into, I guess, this other question where like maybe your role isn't quite as influential in the finished product, right? You're kind of more of an order taker. Obviously, you have like an extremely valuable skill set that'll contribute to the final product. But I think naturally that opens up more bandwidth that you may have to contribute to the set as a whole, right?
Hmm.
And like kind of like pitch into more of like the vibe guy in a sense, right? Like we kind of talked a little bit about that with like you got a killer PA, he or she can like have a ton of influence in that realm.
Hmm.
But I think this is a really important topic in general of like how do you approach sets and networking and working with people, because oftentimes these settings can be high stress, a lot of
Right.
times it's a lot of money, crazy hours. Oftentimes there's lots of travel involved. Sometimes you're working with people that you never worked with before, so that can add just like an extra layer to it. But how do you approach working in those types of conditions and being someone, from my perspective, who is 100% like a multiplier of like when Marcus gets on set, it's like that it's a fun vibe. It's not that you're like this super loud, outgoing, like eccentric personality, but I feel like you have a way of navigating it in a way to where
Hmm.
it's like it's a little more subtle than maybe like the classroom jokester that, everyone loved being around and he was a funny dude. I think you have a different approach, but it's a really good one where people walk away from the set and they're like, I want to work with him again. Like Marcus is cool, you know? Is there anything intentionally that you're doing or that you're thinking through, or are you just the natural cool guy that, people want to hang with?
I think my humor is naturally self-deprecating
Okay.
because I
There
don't
you go.
take myself seriously.
Hmm.
So I think that rubs off on people of like he's not taking himself seriously or maybe the situation too seriously.
Hmm.
So like, you know, we can be low stress about it too. Um, but I do think like any set is a networking opportunity. And I think obviously your skills are huge when being hired, but like maybe your personality is like 50% of it. I don't know. It's like
Yeah.
how
Maybe
many
even more.
people, maybe more. Like so many people can know everything about a camera, can hit record and aim it correctly, check audio levels, whatever. But if
Hmm.
you're like kind of a bummer to be around all day, and you got a job that's 5 days straight, 12 hours a day, like, and you might not get hired again if you're like not fun to be around. Um,
Hmm.
and I don't think that means, like you were saying, like you need to be someone who's super entertaining or something like that. But I think if you're just personable and you like are inquisitive about other people's lives, like most people just want to be heard and they want to talk to people and stuff. So if you can just ask them questions about themselves and
Yeah.
make them feel special and important, then I think you know, you're gonna be liked and you're gonna be invited back. But it is definitely hard, like you're saying. It's like super high stakes. It feels like sometimes, and you're sleep deprived. And I mean, honestly, the hardest time I have to fight the feeling of being frustrated or bummed is usually shooting skiing
Hmm.
because I hate being cold more than anything in the world.
Oh,
And
really?
that's all shooting skiing is standing in the cold, holding a metal box and waiting for an athlete to do something, and they might mess it up and then it might take 40 minutes to reset or something.
Brutal.
Yeah. So that can be tough. But yeah, like you're saying, I think the cool thing about having like a lower stakes job or role is, if you're just cam op, if you're just PA, AC, whatever, you can be a little more fun and personable, and because you're focusing on one smaller part. Where
Yeah.
when I'm DPing, directing, it's like I'm focusing on way too many things, and I'm constantly getting asked questions from different members of the crew because they're trying to help, get ahead of the game a little bit and figure out what we're going to do next. And
Hmm.
there's like just so much pressure, it feels like, at the time on you,
Yeah.
that it can be easy to like not be personable. I think
Yeah.
there was an early part of my career where I was trying to do too much with too little hands, and for like a year, and I felt like I was noticing that I was like becoming a little bit of a robot on set
Hmm.
and not being personable, not having fun, not just relaxing a little bit. And, I think sometimes even just you can be like screaming on the inside and freaking out, but as long as you just keep your cool on the outside, the rest of your crew will also keep their cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like you touch on a good point of there's different behavior that you can follow through with depending on what role you're filling in certain sets, right? Like if you aren't necessarily the DP or the director, that would be a great opportunity. And there is a high stress situation to just be like, let me know what I can do. Like I'm available, super happy to help. Can I go clean the bikes or can I go package or like put away this gear? Is that helpful?
Mm,
Even then, it's just like, just tell me because I'm ready to rock and roll whatever you need. And then just step away and let them do
100%.
their thing, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
then I feel like sometimes, I think someone could take this conversation and be like, man, I got to be personable throughout the whole shoot. But if it's a high stress situation and you're like,
Yeah, maybe.
hey, where'd you grow up? It'd be like,
Yeah,
bro,
definitely.
go away, like let me figure out my stuff. But yeah, I
Yeah,
think the
read
high
the
stress
room.
situation, yeah, it's like, how can I help? If nothing, great. I'll be within earshot constantly. Because the other thing that's kind of annoying too, I think sometimes on shoots is when you're trying to like, you're stressed, you've got all the stuff that you need to like knock out, and there's different members of the crew that are being super casual and just like chatting away the day or not paying attention or they're just not quite aware. So you're like,
Yeah.
hey, I need you to just be like, you don't need to be at my beck and call, but just read the room a little bit and just be ready to go when we're ready to go.
Mm,
But then on the flip side, there's just so many roles to fill. And I think reading the room is a big part of it. But
yeah. Yeah,
you know, just,
do it when it's appropriate. I
yeah,
mean, like my biggest peeve is being finally ready to shoot and then my AC like talking to someone and I'm like, yo, focus up.
yep,
Like we're finally ready. Like we got all the pieces here and then, and then you just got bored, so you started talking. So yeah, there is a fine balance to it.
yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where, to your point that you made a while back of like having such a good team, right? Like a good AC is huge where they
Hmm.
can kind of make light with maybe the talent. So talent's having a good time on set, but they're still
Totally.
cued in enough with you to be like, all right, let's jump back into it, and they can kind of kickstart some of the actions when you are ready and maybe the director's finishing a few other responsibilities or whatever it looks like. But
Hmm.
no, I
Yeah.
think I think you hit on some really good advice of just kind of playing it by ear, being aware.
Yeah, being aware and yeah, I think just treat any set as a networking opportunity as long
Yeah.
as it doesn't get in the way of like doing your job.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think maybe one other thing to note, there's so much downtime when you are on set,
Hmm.
like in between takes is a little bit more of a sliver of a moment that you may or may not have. So you kind of roll
Right.
the dice if you're going to be casual during those moments. But traveling to and from, lunch or dinner after, gear prep here or there, like there's a lot of extended periods of time where those are great opportunities to your point, get to know people and let them talk about themselves. That's
Yeah.
that's funny. That's actually a piece of advice my mom has always said is if you can walk away from a conversation and the person you're talking to has just talked about themselves, then you did a good job like facilitating the conversation, because no one likes to
Yeah.
hear other people talk about themselves, but everyone likes telling you a story or two about themselves, which is funny.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. People want to be heard and
Yeah.
understood, so
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Cool, man. Well, dude, 2 hours. You
I
said
know.
you wondered if you had that much to say, but here we are.
I know, I can't believe it. Yeah, Ryan was like, "Yeah, they've been going like 2 hours long," and I was like, "I seriously doubt I can talk for 2 hours," but here we go.
Uh, it's cool though. It's fun. Yeah, I think it's fun digging into the industry and just kind of like what we just ended talking about, just talking about people, right? And
Hmm.
just kind of hearing what goes on behind the curtain with creatives, because I think that's kind of a big thing that it's always kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit of like, and it might be a little more in my industry of like cycling. It's like that's our camera guy, that's our photo guy, that's our whatever.
Mm,
It's super natural, and I totally understand that. Like, obviously, the athletes will get the spotlight,
right.
but in the same breath, there's so much talent that goes on behind the camera that I think oftentimes is underappreciated because it's
Totally.
labeled with that's the camera guy. It's like that camera guy has a name and he's got a dope portfolio and like a killer body of work. And so I think just like shedding a little bit of light on what those personalities is like or contribute, maybe is a better way to put it. Is kind of the hope with the podcast in general, but I digress. I'm kind of going on a tangent, but just food for thought.
Yeah, yeah, totally. No, I think and too, I was just gonna add, like, I think this podcast is really cool because, like I was saying, like, there's so much to learn from everyone, and I think
Hmm.
that's the cool thing about this career path is like, not only can you take it in a million different routes, but you can really never learn too much or know everything,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what's fun is we're forever growing. So I think learning from other people and their experiences is so valuable.
For sure. No, that's really well said. Cool, man. Well, I
Yeah.
won't take any more of your time, but I really appreciate it, dude. This has been fun.
Yeah, it's been super fun. Thanks for having me. It's been
Yeah.
fun to go over all the projects, especially the one we did together and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, just
Yeah,
look
for
back
sure.
at where we've come.
For sure, dude. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, take care. We'll talk to you a little later, but thanks,
Okay.
dude.
Yeah. See ya.